He just stepped out for a second.
Okay. So, for those of you who are tuning in online, we're just about to start with Perek Yudaled, chapter 14 of Joshua. Okay. So, last week, chapter 13, we saw the beginning of the divvying up of the land. We saw that the 2.5 tribes who inherited on the eastern side of the Jordan River were given their plots of land, their areas, their inheritance, based on what was promised to them by Moshe Rabbeinu. And we also saw, and this we'll definitely reference this in this class, we saw at the beginning of last week's chapter, it told us that Joshua is becoming old. He's old, coming in age. We spoke about that a little bit, and that there's still plenty of the land that is left that still needs to be inherited. That and in lieu of that, God tells him, okay, before while you still can, divide up the land amongst the tribes. And even though many parts of the land have not been conquered yet, at least everyone will know that that's their assigned lot, and then they'll have the charge basically to go and conquer those lands and settle them, even if you, Joshua, are not going to be there to lead them. Right? That's basically what we saw. Okay, so we're starting in chapter 14. Before we start this, I'll just give a general introduction. Basically, between now, chapter 14 and I think it's chapter 22 or 23, is when we're not going to see a lot of that actually. Is basically very technical, describing the borders of the territories or the different areas, regions of the land that were given to the different tribes. So a lot of it is very, very, very technical, just basically, I mentioned this last week, just verbally trying to describe the map of Israel and the different areas. That basically tries to draw a line of the cities and the territories, the areas of each tribe. But sprinkled among those very technical descriptions are some very, very interesting stories about individuals or groups of individuals amongst the nation. They kind of stick out, or kind of like, stick out from the above the surface of the regular dividing up the land. And our chapter is going to be the first example of this. So let's go ahead and start. And these are the cities which the children of Israel inherited in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the heads of the tribes of the children of Israel distributed for inheritance to them. By lot. So now basically it's opening the next 10 chapters. Say, these are the cities. Okay, by lot was their inheritance, as Hashem commanded through Moshe for the 9 tribes and for the half tribe. Why only 9.5 tribes? Why are only 9.5 tribes mentioned here? Because the 2.5 we mentioned last week already. We're done. They got their inheritance. For Moshe had given the inheritance of 2 tribes and a half tribe on the other side of the Jordan, but to the Levites he gave no inheritance among them. Right? We discussed this last week. For the children of Joseph were 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, but they gave no part to the Levites in the land save cities to dwell in, and the open land about them for their cattle and their flocks. As Hashem commanded Moshe, so the children of Israel did, and they divided the land. Okay? So that's kind of like an introduction, bringing us up to speed. Okay, now we're at what we're going to focus on. Then the children of Judah came to Joshua in Gilgal. Right? Gilgal is where they are camped for all these years, ever since they came into the land, ever since they crossed the Jordan. They've been camped in the Gilgal. That is the location of where the Mishkan is. And all of the wars and all the battles and all of the conquests, they all started from Gilgal, and that's where they ended coming back to until they will eventually go and inherit their specific areas. Then the children of Judah came to Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb, the son of Yefuneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, okay. Hello, Sylvia. How are you?
Hey. Good, how are you?
Okay, we're we're just starting. We just got to the part where the part that we're gonna start the main part of the thing. So I'll wait for you to catch up with us. We're in chapter 14.
I'm good.
Chapter 14, verse 6. Okay.
Thank you.
Then the children of Judah came to Joshua and Gilgal, and Caleb the son of Yehoshua the Kenizzite said to him, "You know the thing that Hashem spoke to Moshe, the man of God, concerning me and concerning you in Kadesh Barnea." Okay, so let's just remember, who is Caleb ben Yehoshua?
The spy.
Right.
Was good.
Right, he's the other good guy. So Caleb ben Yehoshua and Yehoshua ben Nun, they were amongst the 12 tribes. The 12 spies, and the two of them were the good guys, basically, right? And they were both rewarded because they did not participate in the sin of the spies. Not only did they not participate, but they, spoke up against the spies and tried to infuse the people with faith and yes, we can, and God will help us, and so on and so forth. The reward was basically that they weren't going to get punished, right? That they were not included in the decree of the tribes being killed, and the spies being killed, dying in the plague, and all of the men of that era and of that age not being allowed to enter, not meriting to enter the land of Israel, whereas the two of them, yes, right? So that's the same Caleb. That's the same Caleb. So he says to him again, you know the thing that Hashem spoke to Moshe, the man of God, concerning me and concerning you in Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old when Moshe, the servant of Hashem, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought him back word as it was in my heart. And my brothers that went up with me made the heart of the people melt. But I fulfilled the will of Hashem, my God. And Moshe swore on that day, saying, surely the land upon which your foot has trodden shall be your inheritance and your children's forever, because you have fulfilled the will of Hashem, my God. Questions, observations?
When he's there in the land, why is he asking? It seems like he's questioning, why is this not happening? Right?
Well, right now everything is still in past tense, right? He's describing something that happened. We'll see, if you look at the next verse, which we're not going to read the whole thing yet, he says, and now, behold, Hashem has kept me alive. And then he goes on and makes a request. But we'll get to that later. I want to wait before we get to, he's laying the groundwork for something, which we'll see later on. But there's something very strange about, he's describing the events of, right, not in full detail, but in a very, like a synopsis, he's summarizing it very much, but what is very strange about his description of the sin of the spies?
Could one ask that it looks like he's saying that he alone stood up as opposed to he and Joshua?
It doesn't look like he's saying him alone. He is saying him alone. He's saying it, meaning you could see there's a very clear contrast between his opening statement, right? Verse 6, you know the thing that Hashem spoke to Moshe, the man of God, concerning me and concerning you. Right? They're buddies, right? Meaning they're buddies. They're colleagues. They are the two, they are the only two, who have survived. Meaning you can imagine that they're probably they're also, not probably, they're the two oldest men in the nation also. And not only are they the oldest men, but they were from the original group of the spies. And you have to remember, who are the people that were chosen to be amongst the 12 spies? These were not nobodies.
Princes, yeah.
These were princes. These were heads of their tribes. These were heads of their tribes 40 years ago. 45 years ago. Right? So when you say that these are the elders of the nation, that is, elders in every possible way. They are the last two surviving, from the original, not just from that they're the only two who survived from that generation, but not just anybody, right? So he says, you remember what God promised, or Moshe, the man of God, promised concerning me and concerning you. Okay, but then look at the contrast. I was 40 years old when Moshe, the servant of Hashem, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought him, who's him? Moshe. I brought him back word as it was in my heart. And my brothers. He doesn't say, and our brothers. My brothers meaning all the other ones. Almost as if... But, okay, he's saying my brothers. Yes. But he's saying my brothers that went up with me made the heart of the people melt. Meaning, is he including Joshua in this?
He didn't say we did this.
He didn't say we. He says, right? But I fulfilled the will of Hashem, my God. Wisdom, it should be, but we. What's my? And Moshe swore that day, saying, surely the land upon which your foot, in Hebrew it's clearer, because in English, your foot could be speaking to plural. But in Hebrew it's raglecha, which is singular. Your singular foot. Right? Surely the land upon which your foot, meaning your foot, Kalev, has trodden shall be your inheritance, and your children's forever, because you have fulfilled the will of Hashem, my God. So the obvious question here, as you pointed out, Paul, you were being very polite, but it doesn't look like he's excluding Joshua. He absolutely is. And the question is, why? What's going on here? What, is he accusing Joshua here of being part of the thing of the spies, or is he just removed? Like, what's going on here? Thoughts?
Unless you argue that maybe he thought that Joshua already got his reward by leading this whole contingent. He's the one who led them. Caleb seems not to have benefited to the same extent for his equal participation in the positive reports.
Interesting. You're saying, listen, Joshua has already gotten his, so to say, right? Joshua has become he's been rewarded either directly as a consequence of that or because he was Moshe's student or whatever, but Joshua already got his, right? He's the leader, but what did Caleb get? We haven't heard about him till now. I'm sorry, just 1 second. Sorry. So it's very, very strange, right? You would agree. Now, we'll see as we continue. I think that even just by reading the pshat of the verses, we'll be able to figure out a little bit of what's going on here. But it's very clear that something here is, meaning, I think there's only two possible options. Again, why this is happening, we'll see later on. But there's only two options. Either he's just ignoring Joshua's role in the story, or that's best case scenario. Best case scenario, he's just kind of like ignoring Joshua's role in the story. And worst case scenario, he's like putting Joshua inadvertently on, in the bad group. Okay? Although that's harder to see, but it's as if he kind of removed Joshua from the equation. He says it was just me against them. Now, we'll see soon, I think, why he's doing it, because remember, this is just him laying the groundwork for. He's telling the story of what happened from a very certain perspective, and we all know, you remember a story or you tell a story with the emphasis that you want, because of what you're hoping people will hear, because of the message you hope to give across. You emphasize things, some things that might have been not so important at the time, you make them more important. Some things that were very dramatic at the time, you might downplay them because you don't think that was significant. whatever, depending on who you're talking to. You're describing an event from your life, to your grandchildren, you'll describe it differently than when you're describing it to peers, because
That's why, Rabbi, they say his story is his story.
right,
History, right?
right,
So it depends on from which perspective.
yeah, but before we get to answering that, I want to point out something which is really, it's kind of like, we've seen at the beginning of the book of Yehoshua. We saw this with the sin when we compared the two stories of the spies. We saw in a few places that the way in which a story from Torah is told later on, or retold later on in Tanakh, sometimes, many times, can be seen as a perush, meaning just like, let's say, in Sefer Devarim, when we hear Moshe recounting the stories of the desert, and right, this is one of the big things that you do when you learn Sefer Devarim, is you compare and see how does Moshe tell the story and what are the differences. Are these differences because this is Moshe's perspective on it from the perspective of a leader? Is this just how he wants it to be remembered for posterity, because he wants the educational emphasis to be one and not something else? How does this explain what happened? Right, this is one of the things you do when you meet an event that's being told in a later point of time. You kind of look back and it helps you reinterpret it or see how it was remembered through, for posterity. We've done this already a few times, the beginning of Sefer Yehoshua. And this is a case where we're going to do it again. Well, not very long, we won't. But I want to point out, because you see Kalev is very much putting himself as being more prominent than Yehoshua in the story. And our automatic response is like, well, that doesn't, that's not true. Is Kalev skewing it? Because, and if so, why? I think he is skewing it a little bit, but a lot less than you might think. Please open Sefer Bamidbar. Yeah.
One other recollection I have of the original story was that Moshe blessed Yehoshua, right?
Yes, he gave him a special blessing, and changed his name in preparation for the trip.
And Caleb didn't get that extra boost, if you will.
You're right. I know. I like where you're going with it. Meaning,
sort of thinking, I was able to do it on my own. You had Moshe's help, but
right.
I, accomplished. This is how he's distinguishing that.
Yes, I agree 100%, and we'll see that in a moment. Yes, Sylvia.
I was already looking at Bamidbar, and I think that when the spies said, the land is full of giants and everything, Caleb was the first one to go against them. Not
okay,
Yehoshua.
so yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. Open up Bamidbar chapter 13, verse 30. Okay, so you open up Bamidbar chapter 13, verse 30. Actually, I have to go back. Two verses because it actually fits in well with what we're going to see later on in the chapter. It said they returned from the land. Verse 25. They returned from spying out the land at the end of 40 days. They went and came to Moshe and to Aaron and to the entire assembly of the children of Israel. Verse 27. They reported to him and said, "We arrived in the land at which you sent us, and indeed it flows with milk and honey." And this is its fruit. But here we go. The people that dwells in the land is powerful. The cities, remember this for afterwards, okay? The cities are fortified and very great. And we also saw the offspring of the giant. Amalek dwells in the area, the south, etc., etc. Verse 30. Caleb silenced the people toward Moshe and said, "We shall surely ascend and conquer it." But the men who had ascended with what? With him. Right, you see it?
Yeah.
Said, "We cannot ascend to the people, for it is too strong for us." Only afterwards, where is this? Just a second. So in this story, in the verses, yes, we do find Joshua joining in afterwards, but 100%, Caleb is leading the charge. Caleb is leading the charge. He is on his own, opposing the rest of the spies.
Yeah, you don't see Yeshua mentioned again until verse 6, right?
Where is it? Yeah.
Yeshua and Caleb.
Yes. Exactly. So Yehoshua joins in afterwards, and we don't know exactly what caused him to join in. Maybe he felt that way the whole time. But Caleb is the one who absolutely is leading, and how many times have we read the story of the, you always say, yeah, Yehoshua and Caleb, Yehoshua and Caleb. It's not Yehoshua and Caleb. It's Caleb, mainly, and a little bit Yehoshua. And Paul, as you said, and I agree with you 100%, it was a lot easier for Yehoshua. Yehoshua is Moshe's student. What? He's gonna join in a coalition against Moshe Rabbeinu. It's not impossible, but it's a lot more. It makes a lot more sense that Joshua would automatically side with Moshe, especially considering that he got like this extra boost, of whether it's for the sake of confidence or in order to act as Moshe's representative by getting some kind of like some kind of position amongst the group as they're going, or whether it's like what the Midrash said, which is in order to protect him from this and this of the spies. Why would Yehoshua need the protection and not Caleb? Maybe Yehoshua was more susceptible naturally, whereas Caleb was more. Caleb was more central. Yes, Sylvia.
No, that's what I was going to say, that Hashem gave Yehoshua the extra boost because maybe he wasn't as strong naturally as Caleb was.
Right. Yeah. Meaning, based on this, the Midrash, that famous Midrash that we were just quoting, makes sense. That he gave him that extra yud in order to protect him from the evil plan, the plan of the spies. What about Caleb? Obviously, Caleb didn't need it. And even with the extra boost that Yehoshua got from being Moshe's student and getting that extra yud and the bracha, he still did not lead the charge. He still only seems to follow Caleb.
Right.
So
Caleb was younger.
What?
Isn't Caleb young? We see that Caleb is younger.
Is he younger?
He's 80 now.
He's 85 now. He's 85 now.
85. But Yeshua in the last chapter, wasn't he 110 or something like that?
Yeah.
No, he passes away. He passes away at the age of 110. We don't know exactly how old he is here. Probably somewhere around that. Probably somewhere around 85. I think we do know exactly. I mean, I don't know exactly, but I do think we do have a few anchors in the text that help us figure out exactly how old he was. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if there was. I don't think there was such a big age difference between them necessarily. Yeah, Sylvia.
So based on this, why did Yehoshua become the leader, not Caleb? Because even with a boost, he wasn't as strong as Caleb.
Well, the short answer, the short answer to that is Hashem chose him. Sorry, wait, who chose him? No, Moshe chose him. Right? Yeah.
But then Hashem also chose him.
And Hashem, right? And no. Sorry. No, what am I talking about? Moshe requested from Hashem to appoint a successor for him. Moshe described to Hashem. Moshe basically put in a request saying, please appoint upon the nation a person of this type. And Hashem says, if I remember correctly, and Hashem says, Yehoshua. So the characteristics that Moshe defines, that Hashem then seems to identify as Yehoshua, is Ish asher ruach bo, a person who has who has ruach in him, a spirit. There's a lot of different interpretations to understand that. Is that someone who is who is spiritual oriented? Is it someone who has a lot of ruach? Could be enthusiasm. There's the midrash comes and says someone who knows how to aim himself to fit with or to respond to every single ruach, every single person's spirit, knows how to identify the need of every single person. And so there's a lot of different interpretations to that verse. But bottom line, Hashem chose him. But also it makes sense because what is the main thing we keep on hearing how Yehoshua is being described throughout this book? What is his main attribute, so to say, that he's being that he keeps on being referred to? The servant of Moshe. The job of the person coming after Moshe is not necessarily to be so independent, is not to be a revolutionary, not to be necessarily. His job is to be the transition, kind of like to see through, to see through Moshe's plan of bringing the people into the land and following Moshe's instructions as far as when you enter the land, go to the 2 mountains, do this ceremony, hold true to the promise that was made to the 2.5 tribes. Make sure that they do their job and then give them, and that's repeated. We saw throughout the book there was only one chapter only where Yehoshua seems to have gained some kind of independence, but his job was to remember the first chapter. The first chapter was just filled from beginning to end with Moshe the servant of Hashem, right? Yeshua's job was to be, and maybe Kalev wouldn't be maybe Kalev under other circumstances, and we'll see when we get in a few weeks, hopefully when we start the book of Shoftim, we'll see there's very different types of leaders that arise. That's one of the fantastic things about Sefer Shoftim, that you have all these little short stories of the judges, and they're so different from each other, and they all play into some kind of big historic stage that the Jewish people are going through, but Yeshua's job is to be Moshe's servant. That's his job. So, meaning if these two people were now running for an election, so I would probably, based on what we know so far, and definitely based on what we're going to see, I would probably choose Kalev. But Joshua is not trying to be a big deal or someone who's oppositional to these forces. That he just wants to fulfill Moshe's task he was given by Moshe.
Stay the course, I think, is the expression.
Stay the course, or complete the course. So also, if you look, for instance, if you just want to strengthen this point, look in we're still in Bamidbar, look at chapter 14, verse 24. Verse 22, we'll start from verse 22. That the men who have seen my glory and my signs that I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tested me these 10 times and have not heeded my voice, if they will see the land that I have sworn to give their forefathers, and all who anger me shall not see it, but my servant, interesting choice of words, right? But my servant Kalev, where am I? Yeah, because a different spirit was with him, and he followed me wholeheartedly, I shall bring him to the land to which he came, and his offspring shall possess it. Right? That's the verse that Kalev is referring to. That's what he's saying. And Moshe swore on that day, saying, surely the land upon which your foot has trodden shall be your inheritance and your children's forever. But it's interesting, right? We don't always notice this. When Hashem speaks to Moshe about the fact that the 10 spies will die and the 2 will survive and make it into the land and inherit, Hashem only mentions Kalev. And he mentions the 10 and Kalev. What about Joshua? Why doesn't Hashem mention Joshua? He's not part of the 10, obviously. but he doesn't mention him with Kalev. Because Kalev was the driving force, not Yehoshua. Yehoshua was Moshe's loyal servant, and as Moshe's loyal servant, but this is a good example of where, it's like, you look, you thought you knew the story, we read it 1,000 times, it's like, wait a second, I didn't notice that. Kalev...
Indeed.
Yeah.
We thought the story so well that when we read the passage in Joshua, I felt uncomfortable, like, who does this Kalev think he is?
Yeah, he's like, what is it? He's rewriting history.
Yeah, but actually he's restating it verbatim.
Yeah, maybe he needs to make sure that history is remembered correctly.
Right. Yeah.
Now, so that's it is. It's fascinating. But we still have the question, even so, okay, so even though he has stated, he's retold the facts as they occurred, why? Like, what is it's still very, very emphasized that he's emphasizing himself and that he's leaving out Joshua. I mean, like, come on, can't you have some courtesy? Have some courtesy, just, be magnanimous, like, why not also include Joshua? Like, so we still have the question of why is he, there's no question that he's emphasizing here, me, right? That Hashem, right? I was 40 years old when Moshe, the servant of Hashem, sent me. Like, come on. You want to emphasize that you're the one who stood up to the tent, and you're the one who said the positive things first? Fine. But you're going to say he sent me? Come on, say he sent us. There's still something here, even though, yes, he has retold the history. He's kind of like straightening out the record, make sure we know how it happened. But still, there seems to be an overemphasis on him and an overemphasis on it seems to be a clear attempt to kind of keep Yehoshua on the sidelines of that story. Yes, Sylvia?
But isn't he emphasizing himself because that promise that Hashem made was only for him, and maybe that's where he's leading to? So Yehoshua isn't really part of
right. I agree.
What he's getting to.
Yes, the answer is yes. I think you're right, and for that we'll continue and we'll see. Yes, it goes in that direction. Okay. So Kalev continues. And now, right? First he recounted what happened, and now he's saying, and now, behold, Hashem has kept me alive as he spoke these 45 years. From the time Hashem spoke this word to Moshe while Israel walked in the wilderness. And now, behold, I am this day 85 years old. I am still as strong this day as I was on the day that Moshe sent me. As my strength was then, even so is my strength now, for war, both to go out and to come in. And now give me this mountain of which Hashem spoke on that day. For you heard on that day how the Anakim, right, the giants, were there, and that the cities were big and fortified. It may be that Hashem will be with me, and I shall drive them out as Hashem spoke. Okay, we'll stop here for a moment.
So, Rabbi, is this in direct contrast to how we started last week, where Hashem told Yehoshua that he was old?
Bingo, absolutely. This is in harsh contrast to the opening statement of last week's chapter. Right? Last week's chapter, I don't have it in front of me. Sylvia, you want to go ahead and read it for us? The beginning of last week's chapter?
Sure. Joshua was old, well on in years, and Hashem said to him, "You have grown old, you are well on in years, and very much land still remains to be possessed."
Right. That's where we left off. And right, you guys said last week, well, if that's, I forgot who it was who said it, Sylvia, I think maybe it was you, said, like, we're in chapter 13. Like, it's about to, it sounds like the book is finished.
Yeah, there's another half of the book.
There's another half a book. Like, and so, yes, I agree with you, Paul, 100%. This is look how he says, I am still as strong this day as I was on the day that Moshe sent me. Like, this is an 85-year-old man who's, we just heard, right? Remember, these are the two remaining, symbols of the like the great generation, right? The greatest generation, the generation that left Egypt, the generation that saw the miracles, the generation whatever. These are the last two remaining people, meaning there were others, but they were younger. These and they were leaders even back then. These are two of the most significant leaders of the Jewish people for the last 45 years. Okay, and have stood the test of time as far as being the only ones who didn't whatever. You can imagine these are living legends, and of course Yehoshua, the servant of Moshe, and the one who split the Jordan River for us, and the one who brought us into the land and led the charge to destroy Jericho, and so on and so forth. And last chapter, what do we hear? And again, you read it, Sivya, you just read it, and you can hear how much it is emphasized. That we're being told that he's old and coming in age in years, and then Hashem says to him, "Hey, Joshua, you're old and coming in age." Right? And Caleb is standing up here, says, "I'm 85. I am still as strong this day as I was on the day that Moshe sent me," meaning I am as filled with energy and enthusiasm and whatever and youth now at age 85 as I was when I was 40, when I went up and I stood up and I was confident and I, right? By the way,
and
this,
they're both
yeah.
the same age, right?
What?
They're both the same age at this time. Yehoshua is also.
I think so. I'm not completely sure. They're not far in age. I'll have to check it. We do.
So the 14 and 13 chapters are not chronological. Like there's no. Isn't this taking place after we just heard about Yehoshua being 110?
No. 110. I said when he passes away, at the end of the book.
It said he passed away at 110, but this may be a precursor. You could go on for another 20 plus years.
I think that they're a similar age. Okay.
Okay.
No, wait a second. They are a similar age. Because we know, I forget from where, we know that Joshua was 40. I forget where we know this from. But we know that Joshua was 40 when it says that he was Moshe's servant and he did not leave his tent. We know over there from, I forget from where, from some calculation of the verses, of like comparison of some sources, that he was 40. They're basically the same age. They're around the same age. Okay?
Is there something in the Torah sometimes where someone's not going to accomplish much more in their life? You actually say they died or whatever, even though they go on for many years afterwards because they're not really doing more.
There are one or two places where that idea appears. Yes.
I'm just wondering if this is the same sort of thing where.
No, but Joshua hasn't died. No, Joshua is not dead yet. But we just read last week that he's, we know it's right around the corner.
Yes.
Right, as far as where Yehoshua is at.
It's a 25-year corner.
Fine.
If he's really 85 to 110.
Fine. Right, we all know that our leaders. Look at Menachem Begin. Lahavdil, not Lahavdil, great political leader, achieved very significant things as a leader throughout his life, both before the establishment of the state and after the establishment of the state. And at some point, right, the last 10 years of his life, he lived in seclusion, away from the public eye, did not show his face, and he withered away. Even though he was this great, to this day, he's considered to be the most popular and the most positively looked upon Prime Minister of Israel. Depending on the poll, it's him and Ben Gurion are like neck and neck always, as far as okay. So anyhow, yes. So this is a very, very clear contrast. And by the way, there is a very crucial phrase here that will help us to understand what's going on. At the end of verse 11, he says, "As my strength was then, even so is my strength now. for war, both to go out and to come in. This phrase is not a meaningless phrase. This is a phrase that we know. We've met it a few times. One example would be also in Bamidbar, chapter 27. Chapter 27, verse 16. Just a second. Let me see if I found it. Okay, you guys ready for this? This is a big wow. This is an eye-opener. You guys see it? Chapter 27, verse 17.
Yeah, let the Lord.
Moshe spoke to Hashem, saying, this is what we were referring to before, may Hashem, God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the assembly who shall go out before them and come in before them. The phrase that Kalev is using to describe himself now at age 85 is taken directly from Moshe's request from Hashem to appoint a leader, a successor to his own leadership. This is not a nothing phrase. So, what is actually going on here?
Is he asking that Yeshua replace himself with Caleb? So Caleb should replace him?
That's what it almost sounds like. But he's not saying it directly.
I was afraid to say almost sounds like, because I wouldn't be as positive as I should have been, like I was early in the class.
No, but over here you would be right. Over here you'd be right, because he's not coming out explicitly and saying it. Because what is he actually asking for? He's saying, let me do war, conquer, and lead, but not lead the entire nation. Although, maybe that's what he's aiming to, but he doesn't say it. But that phrase is a significant phrase. That is not a coincidence of a phrase. Okay? But he is asking him for permission, for his blessing or permission to. It sounds as if Caleb is saying, he's being nice about it. He's saying, listen, Joshua, you're old. You're not conquering anything else anymore. That's it. You're done. Not because that's the fact. We saw it last chapter, right? You're dividing up the land, as a last act. Instead of leading the nation and conquering it, you're dividing it up and saying, okay, each tribe now go conquer. This is your land. Go ahead, figure it out. He's no longer leading the entire nation, right? Until now, every single battle that they led, the entire nation participated. Literally the entire nation, meaning including the 2.5 tribes of the eastern side, right? They were obligated to stay on the western side and be at the forefront of the battle until all the tribes settled. But they're not. They were just told, go back. Okay, you can go back now. And Joshua was no longer leading the entire nation and conquering the entire land. They conquered a significant portion, mainly of the center of the country, the mountain range in Judea, a little bit north, but very significant portions, the majority of the south, the majority of today's Gaza and those areas, the significant portions of the north have not been conquered yet. And then Caleb comes and says, okay, you're saying that we need to conquer? Now, okay, right? Because look at how verse 6. Then the children of Judah came to Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb, son of Yehoshua, said to him. So Caleb approached Joshua as a representative of the tribe of Judah, which is not surprising considering the historical role of Judah as a representative of the brothers. It's actually, I want to see a really cool nugget. Look at the Hebrew of verse 6. What's the word there? Vaigshu. Vaigash. Vaigshu bnei Yehuda. Does that sound familiar? Vayigash elav Yehuda. And over there, last time around in Egypt, who was Yehuda approaching? Yosef. And who is Yehuda approaching now? Yehoshua. What tribe is Yehoshua from? He's from the tribe, he's a descendant of Yosef. Right? Look at verse 4. There's a lot of nuggets here in this chapter. Look at verse 4. For the children of Joseph were two tribes, Menashe and Ephraim. It's almost as if it's setting it up to remind. So when we read Veigishu Bnei Yehuda, that it will be reminiscent a little bit. It will kind of it'll like twinkle in our minds. This dynamic of Yehuda approaching Yosef, or the leader, with a request as a representative of the rest of the nation. What is the full significance of that resemblance? I'm not even sure, but it's very much there. Okay.
Yosef gives his superiority, I guess.
Yes. Well, we'll see. We'll see also throughout. We'll see it soon. We'll see it later on in the book. We'll see in Shoftim that it's a historic. It's going to be throughout the Tanakh. We're going to have this tension between the tribes of Yehuda, of Judah, and we'll see the first splinter, real splinter. The kingdom of Israel. Meaning, when the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel split, it was someone from the tribe of Ephraim, Yerovam ben Nevat. He's the one who splintered and took the 10 tribes and created the northern kingdom. And we'll see throughout history there's this tension, or this split, or this rivalry exists between Yehuda and the look. Who is the first king of Israel? Shaul. Okay, and Shaul comes from the tribe of Binyamin. So he comes from the same branch, the same branch of the children of Rachel, and then who takes over? David, right? And there's the rivalry over there, and then David is from the tribe of Yehuda. Yes, yeah.
One quick question, Rabbi. I presume that Hashem communicated through prophecy to, when we started last week, Hashem said to Joshua, "You're getting old." So why would Caleb not go to ask Hashem to give guidance as to, should I take over from? Like, he's going to Joshua rather than...
Joshua is the leader. He's the legitimate leader. And I don't think, he doesn't seem to be in direct opposition of him. It's almost, I think, as if he's saying, Joshua, I know you can't anymore.
I'm here to help.
Yeah, listen, I'm following what you said. You said each tribe now needs to go and inherit. So I'll do it. It's almost as if he's saying, don't worry, I got this.
Right. Okay.
It's like the next stage of the leadership, going from Joshua is basically, after last week, whether by choice or by force, either by choice or by not choice, reality, he's relinquishing and saying, okay, every tribe is now going to be told what land is their inheritance, and they should go get it, and Hashem will help you conquer it. So Kalev, and this is a classic Judean, a tribe of Judah characteristic of leading the charge, stepping forward, leading the other brothers. We know that Yehuda is a leader, also in a negative way, right? When they sold Joseph, whose idea was it to sell Joseph? Yehuda. It was Yehuda's idea to sell him. He's a leader. And who's the leader of the tribe of Yehuda? Well, quite obviously, Caleb. He's been the leader of the tribe of Yehuda for 45 years. So he steps forward and says, it almost like if it weren't a pious and righteous person like Kalev, we wouldn't believe it. We would think it's like one of these insulting compliments. It's like,
Right.
don't worry. You can put your faith in me. I know you're old and weak and you're almost like, I'll do it. Don't worry. I'll show them what needs to be done. We'd be like, oh yeah, thank you so much. You're volunteering yourself, this altruist, being, who are you kidding? But in this case, it really does seem like it. But the contrast to Yehoshua of last week's chapter is very, very clear. But it almost seems as if, okay, we know that this is, Yehoshua was very clearly, from day one, just supposed to be a chapter in Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership. That's his whole essence. And now he's saying, okay, and now that's it. He's done. Could he have done more? Maybe. Should he have done more? Was there an expectation that maybe he'd get a little bit further in conquering a little bit more of the land? Maybe. But basically, now it's time for the tribes to start stepping up. And Joshua, and then verse 13. And Joshua blessed him and gave Hebron to Caleb, the son of Yefuneh, for an inheritance. Hebron therefore became the inheritance of Caleb, the son of Yefuneh, the Kenizzite, to this day, because he fulfilled the will of Hashem, God of Israel. Look at that statement. Because he fulfilled the will of Hashem, God of Israel. And the name of Hebron before was Kiryat Arba. Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim, and the land had rest from war. By the way, this also connects very nicely to the report that was brought by the spies, right? What is the sentence that Caleb stood up for and said, and said, quiet, calm down. What was the sentence that he responded to? The last sentence that was said that triggered his statement, it was the statement about the Anakim, about the giants. When the spies said giants and everyone started murmuring, as a response to that statement, Caleb gets up and said, quiet, we can do it. We can overcome them. And here he's saying, give me the chance. He's not saying just give me the city. Give me the chance to conquer the city. And he goes and he beats the giants. It's like it comes full circle. You said we can't beat the giants. Even Joshua didn't conquer the giants yet. Not because he tried to and failed, but Caleb is the one. Think of it's almost like poetic historical justice. That the spies said, we can't, there are giants there. And Caleb says, hush, quiet, silence. We can. God will give them into our hand. And now Caleb stands up and says, I can do it. I'm exactly where I was 40 years ago. I'm in the same place. What place? The place that said about the giants, we can. So I can do it. And he goes, and Joshua says, great. Go ahead. It's yours. And Caleb goes, and he kills the giants. And this, basically, we'll see, transitions us into the next step of the ending of Joshua's leadership. He'll still be around for a while. We'll see the last 2 chapters of the book. He gives this phenomenal speech, and just like Moshe Rabbeinu gives a very long speech with a historical perspective, interpreting previous events and giving a kind of a charge and direction for the future. Joshua does the same thing basically. He has his own spin on it, but he does the same style. But between now and then, we won't see Joshua almost. We'll just see the tribes. Meaning we'll see Joshua a little bit. There'll be some issues that will be brought to him to help them figure out where they should settle, and this isn't enough space. And then we'll see the daughters of Tzlofchad come to him, and there's a few little little events that happen, but this is kind of already giving us the direction of where it's going, of the transference of leadership to local, tribal. The tribes are going to start moving forward, and that's the direction it's supposed to go. And the first one will be Yehuda, and from within Yehuda, the first one's going to be Kalev. And all of this is, to some degree, a response to maybe a fix, maybe a tikkun to Chet HaMeraglim all the way back then, when they said, no, we can't. Well, guess what? You're going to have to. Even without a single leader who's going to do it all for you. No. Each tribe is going to do it. You thought you couldn't? You can. And who's better to show the way than Kalev ben Yefuneh? Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Was there something about, did Kalev go to Machpelah to daven before he...
This is a very good example. This is a great, from a methodology perspective, a great example. You are 100% right to connect it. But it happens, but you're doing it in reverse. Meaning, but it's not your fault. That's what we do. We learn Chumash, and we read Rashi, or a Midrash, that says, Kalev ben Yefuneh went and davened in Merat HaMachpelah. And then you get to the story over here, of the inheritance of Kiryat Arba, and you say, oh yeah, didn't it say somewhere? This is the source. The Midrash that we learn over there stems from this event. Because when Chazal... What? Because when Chazal...
Not in the Torah.
No.
Not in the Torah.
No, but it's in Navi, it's in here. This is the source for it. Because he's saying, right, it's written here. Because Kalev says, Moshe swore on that day, saying, surely the land upon which your foot has trodden shall be your inheritance. And then Kalev says, so I want Kiryat Arba. So from this we could learn that what is the land that Kalev went to back then? Must have been Kiryat Arba. And why would Kalev possibly go to Kiryat Arba? Why would he go to Kiryat Arba? Because what's in Kiryat Arba? There's only one thing in Kiryat Arba. Merat HaMachpelah. But we know that he went there. Because it says here that he was told, wherever you went, meaning you personally. So from this, the Midrash does not a very big leap. It's not a very big leap. It's a small darshanut step to come and say, this must be an area that he went to alone, because he's supposed to inherit what? Otherwise, then you'd say, okay, then let him inherit half the country. They walked all the way from south, all the way through the Negev, all the way up to Hebron. They walked half the country, so Kalev should get half the country. No, so it must be where he went separately. He must have gone somewhere just him. And that's the area he's supposed to get. And since we find out that what area did he get Kiryat Arba, then that must be the place he went to. Well, why would he possibly go on his own to Hebron? Well, we know what's in Hebron. And that is how that Midrash came to be. But this is the source of the Midrash that we learn over there.
I remember 2 years ago, I often fall into the trap of saying something, and the rabbi would say, "That's in the Midrash. That's not right." So before we started learning Midrash.
No, you're right. And then we did a tikkun for a whole year to see how Midrash B'chol Zot is. But this is a good example of saying, yeah, like we and this is we've just demonstrated here how a Midrash develops. A Midrash doesn't have to be a fantastical thing. It could be something just you're connecting different dots. But then when you meet it, when you meet it in its first appearance, it sounds like it's just some made up thing. It's not based on anything. You get up here, it's like, oh wow, look at that! All those dots really connect. Now I can understand why it says over there in Rashi that Kalev ben Yefuneh went to daven in Hebron. Yeah, Sivya.
I may be connecting incorrect dots. Was Moshe's, Yosef's bones buried in Merat HaMachpelah?
No.
Oh.
Shechem.
Just the patriarchs.
Okay.
Just the patriarchs.
Yeah. Patriarchs and Avram.
Esav's head.
And Adam and Chava.
That was Midrash as well?
Sure. Listen, all those the only ones based on Pshat that are buried there are Avram and Sarah, and Yitzchak and Rivka, and Yaakov and Leah. Adam and Chava are not mentioned anywhere in Pshat. The Midrash says it, but again, we know now to say the Midrash doesn't stam say things. The Midrash is usually based on something, or it is building on something. So Adam and Chava are not mentioned in Torah itself that they're buried there, or Esav's head. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, all this is skeptic, but where does Rashi get an idea? And again, my theory is that he's contextualizing his own time, but the whole idea of praying at somebody's grave is that has never been brought up in the Torah. Again, this is the only midrashic thing. You go to somebody's grave.
I think you're right. Meaning, I'm trying to think. No, I don't think we have. We don't have, as far as I can remember or think of it, an instance where we see anyone in Tanakh praying, or even visiting. I don't think we have any. I can't think them. I can't right now. I'm not sure that even is a mention of the concept of like visiting a graves. There is the only context there is of like the significance of grave is being buried in a same place where your forefathers, where your fathers are buried. Right. That is an idea that appears many times. Obviously, the first one to do it is Avram, that he's buried next to where he, wants to be buried next where he buried Sarah, and where Yaakov requests to be buried with where he buried Leah. Right. And every when the kings of the house of David, meaning all the descendants of David, when they died, almost all of them, basically, the big deal is made out of the fact that they are buried amongst the graves of the burial, not graves. They didn't have graves really then. They were burial caves. So a big deal is made out of that. But there's definitely, you're right. I think you're right. And it is a later development, yes.
I guess we talk about passing by Rachel's tomb when we get kicked out of the Beis Hamikdash, right? That she's there to comfort us.
Right.
So we're not really visiting, but she's on the road.
Right. So you're right. Actually, that's probably. I'm sure you could research it very easily and find if there are. But that is a. You're right, Paul. That is what would come in. It is explicitly said that they are going by the place of burial, which meaning that if that is mentioned, that means it's significant. There's some significance to passing by or to being near the grave, the burial place of a loved one or of a patriarch or matriarch in this case. Okay. But this chapter is a great example of so many little things that are hidden, and suddenly they're not so hidden if you know what you're looking for, and if you're looking for connections. There's a lot more being said here in this chapter, a lot more that is being described here than meets the eye when you first read it. Okay.
Beautiful, Rabbi. Thank you. Beautiful class.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Many numbers today.
It's okay. It's the shir is the learning is still learning. Okay. Everyone have a.
Hopefully others will listen to it online as well.
Yes. Everyone have a Shavua Tov, and we'll see you again next week. I'll see you next week from Dubai.
Oh, from Dubai. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I think as much as it's wonderful and holy to learn from Eretz Yisrael, somehow putting some Torah in Dubai is not a bad thing either.
Right, exactly. I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye. Be well.
Bye-bye.